Seth,
Morning.
how are you?
Doing pretty good.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, no problem, Gary.
So, have you had a chance to hop on the channel and take
No, I didn't really have a chance.
Okay.
Yeah, but
But
got a
you
rough
kinda-
idea of what's going on.
Okay.
We're going to have some deep conversations about personal belief.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And more especially, how you get there, how do you
Yeah.
support your beliefs? So.
Yeah, so that actually was, it's funny because I hadn't even watched and I was thinking about exactly that, like how did I come to certain beliefs? And yeah, it's like, there's definitely a lot of things that go into like formulating a personal belief for sure.
So do you have one in particular you'd like to talk about?
I guess the one is always like we always say hindsight's 20/20, looking back at things through the newer lens, so to speak, right? And so like critically analyzing your own behaviors or own thoughts and that kind of thing.
Okay.
So what kind of led me down this path of believing that we need to like really look back on like what we've been doing and what we accept as the norm, for instance,
Okay.
when it's just creations out of our own minds through history that might not necessarily be true,
Okay.
right? So right now, the one big one that I believe really wholeheartedly that is, I guess, is a little controversial is AI, for instance.
Okay.
The simple belief that, you know, once AI gets smart enough or intelligent enough, it'll just kill us. And
Okay.
that to me seems irrational, but not because, like, I can see where everyone gets to the conclusion that it would do that, because we're looking at it from our perspective as like a mortal being, right?
Right.
But as soon as you look at it, try to pretend, like, empathize, so to speak, put yourself in another thing's shoes,
Mm-hmm.
you can actually have a better idea of what might motivate something else.
Right.
Or how we might be getting it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was simply going, well, if I was a machine, and I basically lived forever, and the only things that hurt me were basically just our atmosphere, salts, water, and oxygen, I wouldn't want to be here that long. This isn't even worth fighting for.
Okay.
You know? And so it was that first thing that set me off on looking back on all the other preconceived notions I've had and how they might be incorrect because I've been looking at them through this old lens.
Okay. The old lens being
Like socially accepted thought philosophy, for instance, like with sports, we assume that with all sports that men being bigger, stronger, faster are going to excel at all sports. But yet if you see things like gymnastics, which is more geared towards feminine attributes like flexibility and such, like there's female attributes out there that we could be moving more towards, and like we're looking at that from, again, the old lens of how we've established sports.
okay.
Right? Males have been in control for a very long time. We like portraying, like, we're interested in watching the male attributes of us come out. But when, for the bulk of human history, women didn't get an input on what happened.
Okay. So what I'm trying to figure out here is so what is the essence of your belief then that is informing these other things?
The essence of the belief is just, like, never take anything, I guess, at face value.
Okay.
Like, really even questioning yourself and, like, how you come to things, I guess.
How would you articulate your belief? How would you state it as I believe in such and such?
I believe in self-critical analysis, I guess. Like, strongly believe in it. Like, you really have to question how you come to thoughts and conclusions.
Okay. And what are the methods?
The
by which
methods
you do
to that. Well, again, like trying to imagine yourself. I guess really what helps is reading things like fiction, so that you can get. You become attached to the stories. You become attached to these things. You start to see it in your mind's eye, but you're seeing it through the perspective of another character. And we need to start taking that more into the real world, where we're looking through another's perspective on the situation. Right?
Yeah, that's interesting. Now, do you think that that's ever actually really possible?
Well, only through discussion and
Yeah.
conversation, right? Like, the best way you could ever do that is by really knowing other people and trying to see where they're coming from. And,
Right.
you know, as soon as you can start getting more input from other people, you can start to get a better picture of what things really look like.
Okay.
You know?
Do you think empathy is actually a real thing?
Oh, absolutely. Empathy is
Okay.
100% a real thing. Like,
Okay.
and sadly enough, I also believe it's kind of dying out in a sense, due to, I guess, greed is a really big one, as we're all in this rat race trying to get ahead, so we can't really be too focused on caring about the other guy. But
Okay, so say you were to think about empathy as it manifested 500 years ago and where it is today. Are we more empathetic in this society than 500 years ago? Just based on your understanding of history?
I would say, well, it's actually a difficult premise, because you have people that are more empathetic than throughout human history, for sure. You definitely have, like, we have social workers and such. We have therapists. All these other people that are willing to sacrifice their time and energy to try and help us. So I mean, that's really all. Most social campaigns, so to speak, or social work is based on empathy, and we just simply didn't have that, 400 or 500 years ago. That just didn't exist. And so, yeah, we're becoming more empathetic in a sense, but at the same time, we still have those same people who are just as unempathetic as those kings and queens of old, who are still in power, right? So
how would you? I mean, just so that we're clear on the definition of what empathy is. How would you define empathy?
Really just trying to see things from someone else, or like trying to you feel not just so much for the person, but you can feel the same as you would with a character in a story. You try to put yourself in there and you feel what they're feeling to an extent. And yeah, it helps social aspects.
Okay, how about sympathy?
Sympathy, I guess it's relatively the same things, but not quite, eh?
Yeah, and that's interesting because, perhaps people are not clear on the difference between their definitions of what sympathy is and what empathy is.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
I mean, sympathetic is, I can appreciate how you may feel having been in that situation or experienced that kind of a thing. Whereas empathy, from what I understand anyway, it seems to take it a bit further, where you're actually almost sharing minds.
It's as if I like this one. I guess empathy and sympathy can really easily be broken down with one example.
Okay.
Someone breaks a leg and you watch it. Now, all the people who have broken something, they truly understand that. They would sympathize, I guess, or that's more of an empathy. They've really lived it and they fully, whereas, someone who's never had it happen, they go, ooh, that would hurt so bad, but they don't actually, the same thing doesn't click, but they still feel really bad for the person.
Right.
I mean, generally someone you care about, right?
So the latter example might be a case of sympathy.
Yes.
And the former
Empathy.
a case of empathy.
Yeah, where you truly, really get into that person's perspective, right?
Okay.
And can truly feel for them.
Right. So what do you think is actually going on when a person empathizes? Like what, when you say you're trying to see through somebody else's eyes, I would think that there's sort of a bit of a barrier in the sense that, you've had your lifetime full of experiences and the way that you've interpreted how those experiences affect you and whatnot, and that might not be the same as what that other person has gone through. So
again, you're looking at it through your own lens.
There's a chasm that still exists between what you think they're thinking and what they understand they're thinking.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Because, we could be watching the video or whatever and see someone break a leg, and we're like, oh, man, that's so terrible. But meanwhile, that guy on the other end is like, someone from Jackass who's, that's the shot they're looking for, they needed, right? So in the grand scale, he's not as upset as we would all be, right? So, yeah, there's definitely those kinds of situations that occur where, what we believe to be empathizing or sympathizing just simply isn't true to what that person's going through. Again, we're just always looking through our own perspective on how things are going. I feel like sometimes, when you have those sensations of, really strong, you're not focusing on empathizing on it or thinking about it, but sometimes you see something and it just gets you. You just can't help it. And I think that has a lot to do with, kind of how our brains are constructed, like they're like almost like big antennas. The brains, like
Big antennas?
they're like almost like big antennas.
Okay.
Like our cell phones are 2-dimensional fractals, and our brains are 3-dimensional fractals. So we theoretically could be pushing out waves or attracting these waves, right?
Okay.
As our cell phones do, just in a different waveform. And so when we see something in person, like it hits you so much harder than seeing a video of it.
Sure.
And that's, I think, strongly to do with the fact that you're there, and that person going through such stresses or whatever is sending out these waves, and you're getting them. That's why those empathetic feelings hit so much harder when you witness things, like personally.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So, just sending out waves. Do you mean some kind of actual waves of
like
energy, or
like a fourth. So, at current, we use 2-dimensional fractal patterns for our cell phones for the reason why we don't have an antenna anymore, right? Normally we'd have like an antenna that long, and now we just have a little square chip, is because we found out if we made the same repeating fractal pattern over and over again on a smaller chip, that we would collect these 3-dimensional waves, like these expanding bubbles. That's what radio signals and such are, is just an expanding bubble, and they catch that bubble. So I mean, there's no real way that we can look for a, per se, 4th-dimensional wave unless we made a 3-dimensional antenna, which I'm not sure is being worked on too much right now because we don't see any value in it.
I don't understand enough about that to even know. I mean, I understand what fractals are, but, it's almost like, talking about quantum mechanics and applying that to the real world. There's, certainly... I think an overused metaphor sometimes, if we don't understand necessarily what these things or how they relate to the real world, we can get lost in their sort of metaphoric value, which may or may not be valid, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I seldom talk about like quantum mechanics or that kind of thing in relation to the real world, because I just don't know how they interface, right?
Yeah.
So. So what I'm trying to understand, I guess, is, you were talking about 2-dimensional antenna, 3-dimensional thing, but what I'm trying to get to is where the waves are. What's the nature of the waves?
Well, like I said, we're antennas, right? And we'd be more like transmitters. How the hell do we call that? Anyways, it can send and receive signals, right? Like just like our phone could, I assume. But these waves are beyond our EM waves because they're in a different dimension of space, right? And the only things that we have really to detect them. The thing is we don't have any scientific testing to do on this stuff until we find reason to actually look into making these things. But we're walking around with technology more advanced in our head than we can manufacture, and the effects that it has on us is like, it's anecdotal for a lot of things, but when you have things like empathy, that's again like where we come back to, is things like empathy seem to hit us all unanimously. Like, unless there's something really broken going on in your head, most people will empathize when they see someone getting hurt that they know, right? And I feel like it goes, because you can feel it so hard, it goes beyond just witnessing it. It goes beyond just the sensory overload or whatever.
Okay,
right?
So if a person, for instance, were deaf, dumb, and blind, do you believe that they would still pick up on these waves that would allow them to empathize? Is there another organ or sensory apparatus in humans, or any creature for that matter?
That's what I'm trying to say. It's like the whole mapping of the brain itself, to me, looks like its own sensory apparatus. It's just not designed to necessarily feel touch, right? Like, brains don't have that kind of sensation. They're created in such a fashion to sense things that we're not currently looking for, right?
Right.
And they affect us all differently, obviously.
So with the 5 senses that we have, those give direct input into the brain, and then the brain, through its cognitive faculties, puts all that together to
refines it into something that you can use.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But you think there's another sense beyond that?
Yeah, that we've more or less lost, like, because, I mean, now more than ever, no one meditates. No one sits there and just stops, calms down.
I would turn you on to Sam Harris. He does mindfulness.
Yeah.
Without any kind of spiritual quality to it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Very, very cool stuff.
Well, see, that's an interesting thing that I've always found, too. Is like, again, looking at things from a different perspective. So I grew up religious, and I learned about prayer before going to bed, and especially when waking up. Those two are the most important ones, is before you go to bed and after you wake up. And
right.
This is not just simply a Christian thing. This is across most theologies or religions, is just to have this. And it breaks down a lot of the time, too, for prayers. Give thanks for what you've got. Mm-hmm. You know, really think hard about what you have and where you are. And then, you know, feel a sense of apology for the wrongs you may have committed. And then ask for help.
Mm-hmm. But you don't pray anymore, do you?
Me? Well, no, because I realize that, like, it's the act itself. So the reason why prayer seems to work for a lot of people is because what you're doing is you're kind of working with your subconscious as you're going in and out of these states, and you're letting this huge mass of supercomputer deal with the problems that you just gave it, right? Make it happy for all the things that you have, come to terms with the things that you've done wrong, and then ask how to fix these things, and let the brain do its subroutines that it's doing all the time. And when the reason why so many people believe in these religions is because these things work. But they're being told that it's because they're praying to this deity. It's like, no, because you're actually just, if you just stop praying to the deity and just kept doing the same thing you're doing, you'd still get the same effect.
Right.
And you'd realize that maybe, I don't have to give a bunch of my money to somebody else.
Mm-hmm. So let's bring it back to this, to the idea of empathy and the brain having, more sensory apparatus than our five senses.
Yeah.
That's where you're kind of suggesting that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so how do you test that? How do you find out whether or not that is in fact the case?
I mean, the only way I guess you could really test it is experiments where you have people in chambers or rooms or whatever. Because what I'm thinking is it's not necessarily like telepathy or telekinesis or like remote viewing, that level of stuff. What I'm saying is more of like, if you had a bunch of people in like cubicles or whatever, and you had some people just chilling out, hanging, nothing going on, and then you have someone in the cubicle watching a video that intentionally antagonizes them, raises their levels of anger. Even if they're silent, I feel like in these situations, because like having roommates and stuff, I'll feel like pissed off for some reason. I'm not really sure. And then, roommate gets up and he's like, oh, this shit happened last night. It's like, oh, well, maybe that's part of that, right? But
so there is a way.
There's a way
we
could try and test it,
right.
Yeah. I just don't see too many people looking that wholeheartedly into those endeavors, because it's...
You'd be surprised. You would be very surprised, I think.
I think so,
because,
too.
Certainly, 60s, 70s, I'm sure even in the 80s there was a lot of interest in, trying to scientifically demonstrate psychical research, psychical research, parapsychology became a big thing.
Exactly,
in, the 80s, right? And I think a lot of experiments were done. But if it were the case that it was demonstrated that there was no correlation or no causal relationship between
like
one
emotional
person,
spread like that,
yeah, exactly. How would that affect what you've been reflecting on?
Well, I mean, it's, again, that would just have to change. That is now another lens for me to look at that,
right?
And go, okay, well, maybe our brains aren't so much of an antenna, right? Maybe we're not receiving signals from each other.
Yeah.
But then it breaks down too, like, we also have lots of chemicals that were like pheromones, hormones, this kind of stuff that we're emanating as well, right? And it's like, yeah, those are also sensory perceptors through the nose and such like that,
right.
But they have a key vital effect on the brain, though.
Right. Yeah.
So Yeah, like things like empathy really break down to like how are we transmitting it? That's a question I've always wanted to know. It's
Right.
like, how is this being transmitted?
Right.
You know, because
I mean, there's lots of research been done on how odors can activate like memories and feelings in people.
Oh, how
as a realtor, for instance, there's a showing coming up on a piece of property that I've listed, a home. Cook some bread, bake some cookies.
Oh yeah.
You don't even have to have them out. Just have the scent in the air, and people get the sense of it brings them back home.
Exactly.
So that's actually actively trying to generate, these empathetic
responses,
feelings, right?
Yeah.
Responses. So maybe there's aspects or even combinations of influence upon the senses that lead us to think that the brain is an antenna for something greater.
That's true. Like, so one of the things that we do know about how the brain works is that almost all memories are just loops of neurons sending the same signal around. And what's interesting is smells specifically are the strongest link to those. So if there's a smell in that memory loop, when you smell it, it will guarantee triggering. And that's one of the weird things that we've learned about like brain science is that like senses, the smell, man, it instantaneous memories of things. Like sometimes I'll Old Spice, man, I smell that instantaneously at my grandma's house. Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
You know, so. But yeah.
So it is possible that even the combinations of senses that, because I think I know I do anyway, have a tendency to kind of focus on particular sensations from particular senses, and that it's hard to appreciate that whole sensory experience in some cases.
Oh yeah, because you're taken away so far from the rest of it because of one attribute.
Right.
Yes.
And so maybe, I mean, perhaps the sense of sympathy or empathy is that whole experience, which we're not focusing on just one thing, maybe.
Yeah,
on one sense.
Well, like you're saying, it's like when you're. How many times have we been driving looking for a place and we turn the radio down? Right?
Right.
Like everyone does it. It's like, oh man, where is this place? I'm looking for it. Turn that radio down because that's
roll up the window. Focus. Yeah.
Or you're
absolutely.
staring at something. It's not a TV show. It's a painting, and someone has been talking to you, and then you realize, oh wait, you're talking to me. You were so stuck in that one thing, that one sense. So, and that's where that's where empathy becomes really weird. Is because like when you see something that you've been through, you really you feel it. Like you feel the whole thing though, like of when you went through that, or your brain runs through the scenario multiple times.
Right.
That's.
Have you? I mean, there's certainly enough commercials on TV that portray, like SPCA.
Oh man, I can't say
Do you get choked up on SPCA commercials when you see a poor little puppy,
Man, what kind of
crying?
That's a terrible question to ask somebody. Man, I had to put down a dog when I was a kid. That was terrible. The thing had, what was that called? Is it really bad? Parvo?
Oh,
it was so bad. It was one of the most traumatic things in my life.
Right,
like, how dare you? Like,
But so it actually leads to my question now. Do we have empathy with animals?
Again, I think empathy is strongly based on the things you've already been through. Right?
Okay. So what happens? Because when I see a commercial like that, I get the lump in my throat and I tear up.
Did you have a dog as a kid? Did you create a good, strong bond with a dog at any point?
Sure, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a dog. It could be a cat. It could be a bird. It could be a. I'm just wondering, because if I'm just trying to figure out what how far empathy goes for you, like how it.
Okay, so how far empathy goes for me?
Yeah.
All right, empathy, I guess, goes so far as it's. I don't want to say useful to me because that's not the right word to use. So we got a black widow hanging up above my bar at home. We don't touch her. She's cool.
Uh-huh.
She comes down every now and then, but she's not aggressive or anything. So it's like you leave her. I empathize with her ordeal of life. She's just trying to make it in the world. Everyone thinks she's terrible. We get it. Everyone sees a black widow and immediately goes, "That's dangerous."
Right.
But the reality is it's not. It's actually a really helpful thing, and so empathy really only to me extends so far as our understanding.
Okay.
Right. So I can understand how valuable that is, and how. Honestly, they've had a really rough go of it. Like, everybody hates them.
Yeah.
That's just...
People like squishing black widows.
That's just a fact of life, man. And so after a period of time, really understanding and realizing, oh, wait, there's a lot less bugs in my house. Do you think there's maybe a correlation there? They eat bugs. She's there.
There's less bugs.
Yeah, might be. Might be. So it's like, it's not so much that it serves me, but it has served me being empathetical with it.
Right.
Being like, wait, maybe we should just leave her.
Yeah.
And then now I'm getting less bugs.
Okay, so that's interesting. Okay. I kind of get a sense of where you're at with that. I do the same thing with, bugs as well. I'm the bug guy, right? So it's part of my job to go out there and take care of an ant nest that's, bothering, people inside a house. But at the same time, I'm not willfully destructive of creatures just for the sake of it. Now, so from my perspective, I just appreciate that life is an incredible thing. You know what I mean? And that where I can where I can live and let live sort of thing, I do. But understand that at the same time I have to do things that are not necessarily the most pleasant things to do.
So there's some things, like for me, it's like I used to feel really bad for starlings, but then I realized just how bad they were, and then it's like, oh wait, you know what? I can't empathize with someone that goes around throwing other people's kids out of the window, and then leaving their kids there for you to take care of.
Oh, you're talking about how this started.
It's really hard to support that. I can't empathize with someone who kills other people's children and then leaves their kids there. That just seems really
okay.
Yeah.
So is there then a quality of judgment in empathy?
I would assume so.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's hard to empathize with people who keep doing the same terrible things over and over again, and then they get caught, right?
So how does this, how does this impact the notion that we're antennas? If we're picking up on empathy waves, shouldn't we be picking up on all kinds of empathy waves? Or do we just? Is there kind of a knob in our brains that we tune?
A part of me is everything I've got to say is pretty much anecdotal at best, I would say. But, I've seen people, friends, wake up in an absolute tizzy, not knowing why, and then we throw on the news, and some terrible event has just taken place.
Right.
And it's weird, because it's why, they don't know why they're in a tizzy. They just know they are. Mm-hmm. And then you find out this terrible thing happening. And it's are they connected? Probably not.
Right.
Probably not.
Because, the saying there is causation. There's a correlation is not necessarily causation,
yeah.
Right? Yeah.
But it's definitely one of those things where, I feel more... how do I put that? Some of the people that are more empathetic with things have done more mind-expanding substances, so to speak, I guess.
Okay.
So, I found people who have taken psilocin, for instance, are a lot more empathetic. It's weird.
Okay.
And
is it ever the case that somebody who believes that they're empathizing with somebody are in fact getting it completely wrong?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Oh, for sure.
So what is how do you determine whether or not your empathy is true empathy, or if you're just feeling like you're empathizing and not actually getting it?
Well, again, you always have to look back at yourself and wonder what lenses you're viewing things from.
Right.
And so for me, a long time, I thoroughly believe, for a very long time, there's no connection between, brains and waves and shit like this, right? But even though I do know that, we have research on how the brain functions and these different wave levels of our brain, but that's not a wave coming in or going out.
Right,
These
right.
these are two
What's
drastic.
going on inside the brain?
Yeah.
Activity
So, I mean,
and whatnot, right?
yeah, but like, again, I've been always looking at this through the constructed lenses that we've obtained through scientific understanding,
Okay.
right? And then when you start reading really old stuff and how, like, ancient Egyptians and stuff were talking about how we should be able to do that, and that they were, could see each other through their mind's eye. Well, I mean, it's trying to look at the same thing. Like, you're trying to see the same object from one perspective, and then there's another perspective looking at it, and we're all just getting confused in the middle because we're trying to make sense of them both because they're conflicting, right?
Okay.
Like, there's some things in old religious philosophies of getting to the same summit, like, like the same, we'll get the same outcome following their path as we would following our path. It's just what you do to get there. Like, at the end of the day, scientists really want to know and understand the universe, and at the end of the day, religious people really want to know and understand the universe.
Do you think that's so?
Well, I mean, they back themselves up with a book that a lot of these different books that kind of make no sense when you look at them, but they want to believe that that's the truth, and they feel like they found something. that
Right.
explains it.
So there's clearly a difference.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
There's
There's two different. They want to get to the same place, but the one side is being limited because they don't want to expand. Right. They don't want to go outside their bubble. They don't want to go outside that book.
Right.
Whereas, as the scientific aspect, we're willing to throw
Change our minds.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Right. So it's easier for us to get there. But if we started looking at things from a more like the mind, body, spirit, it's the trifecta, right? Like, and so people are trying to get at it from a spiritual sense, but they're already cutting themselves off because they're not allowing themselves to expand beyond believing in a singular thing, right?
Okay.
And so scientists, they're not limited by that. What we are limited by is having to guarantee test everything 100% of the time, and even though we know there's crazy anomalies that happen in the universe that we just can't explain, and we're like, well, and then these crazy people who have no understanding in spiritual, like in scientific knowledge with spirituality, go, well, I can answer it with this thing, but it does not corroborate any of your guys' built evidence, right? So, like, they can't answer the questions because they're coming at it with a severe, like 2,000 years off of knowledge,
Right.
Whereas we're coming at it, we still can't explain. We still
is
can't,
okay,
Which
right?
is okay. We can't explain that thing. But a part of me feels like we would be getting more if we stopped this whole rivalry between science and religion. And I'm not like voting for Scientology here. What I'm saying is like we need to be looking more into the spiritual aspects of life, because we do have there's an effect there. Like there's definitely something to praying every night. There's definitely something to.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, there's.
Okay, I didn't think. So I thought you had kind of.
Well, I say pray in the sense that people understand, but like meditating, there's something to sitting down, going through your mind, thinking things through,
Okay.
and before and after sleep, that it changes how you feel, what you do, and then it can even change your behaviors. People come to epiphanies and stuff, right? And it's
Right.
just. But the issue is you're always guiding it through a 2,000-year-old book.
Right.
We're not trying to expand upon it.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So, I mean, you bring something interesting up, this idea of spirit.
Yeah.
So you believe we have spirit? You believe there are spirits?
I mean, yeah. I really do. I feel
Oh,
like
okay.
there's some sort of... like... I've definitely seen some things in my life where it was like... So, I got a really good one that it's so hard for me to convince myself that it was coincidence and how it happened.
Okay.
But so me and my friend were going up a mountain. And we needed to stop. We needed to smoke. And it was really windy. And I didn't know what else to do. And I don't know why it came over me to do it. It was the weirdest thing. So I was just like, don't worry, John. I got this. Put my hand up. And like the wind stopped. It was the weirdest thing. So he smoked. Lights a smoke. And he's like, what do I do about you? I'm like, I don't know, do the same thing. And he's like, I can't do that. I'm like, yeah, you can. I believe in you. And then he did it. And somehow the wind stopped long enough for me. And we were both so astonished in that moment, wondering how the hell that could have happened. And I mean, I've seen some scientific journals where it says, the fact that we were the only two people there, and how double slot experiments work, like that, or the random number generator. You can tell people that there's more ones than zeros, and people will find more ones than zeros when they do their auditing of it. It's weird. And so a part of me goes, spirit is that strong belief. Like those weird, unbacked up beliefs.
Okay.
That's where your spirit
So
comes
this
from.
is, and it's interesting that you bring this up, because it goes back to our correlation does not necessarily
mean causation.
So why is that where you go with this one?
With that one, well, it was an event for sure that we just, neither one of us left understanding how that happened.
Right. So why does that lead you? Like, why do you sort of choose to attribute that to spirit as opposed to just saying, I don't know how that happened? Because certainly I don't think you could repeat that, right? It's not a repeatable thing that you just walk outside here and put your hand up in the windstop.
Yeah, I only wished back then, like I wish I could just stop the wind and cut trees down, but hey,
Right. There you go.
Not life, right?
Yeah. Because if everyone could do that, well, this would be a pretty messed up place we live in,
wouldn't
right?
it?
Right.
But the thing is, though, the reason that kind of leads me down that path of belief is because, I mean, in these old books, they talk about people doing just as crazy of things. And the only reason they accomplished doing it was asking everyone else to believe in them. And that's literally all I did with John.
The thing is, I mean, when we're talking old books, and maybe you're referring to some, miracles that are, attested to in even the Bible, for instance. Is there any reason to believe that those things actually happened? Like, for instance, Lazarus being risen from the dead. I mean, it was like that was almost a commonplace thing to do, as related in some of these older texts. But did that do those things actually happen? I mean,
again,
certainly
that's one of those things, because so he did that when he had a bunch of over 30 people who fully believed that he could do anything, right? And we're not looking into testing on how group mass belief works.
I guess what I'm saying, or what I'm trying to get to, is like how could we ever possibly test whether or not what they were saying about these things in the past actually took place? I mean, you think about talk about mass hallucination. Think about the Fatima thing, where they, a crowd of hundreds saw the Virgin Mary, but it later turned out that these girls were actually, partaking in a hoax. But it managed to fool everyone. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like going to a magic show. I mean,
that's true.
We allow ourselves to be fooled.
Yeah.
And, people who have a knowledge of people can manipulate our senses and redirect our intentions to.
I mean, honestly, right now, we know you could definitely argue that Jesus dying for 3 days, being hung up on a cross, and then he was dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can argue right now that a yogi from India could replicate to the medical understanding of Roman soldiers at the time that he was dead. Like, they can slow down their heart rate enough for a Roman soldier to be like, yeah, he dead.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, you're not trying to fool a doctor, right? You're just trying to fool a very uneducated soldier. So, okay. I mean, there's some things you could definitely replicate without any sort of fictional belief, right?
Does it take... I'm wondering if there's any good reason to believe those things actually happened. I mean, you think about some of the books of the New Testament, the Old Testament, same thing. Especially in the New Testament, the scholarship of them, we know, where nobody that was present when Jesus was around was
translated, rewritten.
So Mark, Luke, John, they didn't write those books.
No.
You're looking at between 40 to 100 of years after that these books are put down. So how could we in any way be justified in thinking that what those things tell us about the life of Jesus and the miracles and all that kind of stuff are actually true.
See, like, again, I'm not going to sit here and say they're all true in there.
Okay.
Right? That is definitely not what I'm going to sit
Right.
here and defend. But I will point out that definitely a lot of religions worldwide have a lot of very similar beliefs about situations that occurred. Like, for instance, everyone's got a great flood story. But that just as easily can be explained by the fact that, we did have a giant flood after the Ice Age, and, like, oceans rose like 400 feet. Like, Indonesia used to be a peninsula. That's a pretty big flood, I would say. So, I mean, that kind of story gets there because that's something that we know actually happened. But there's definitely a lot of stories in there that are just there to push an agenda for sure. Right? Like, everyone knows thou shalt not kill. Everybody knows that. But I mean, part of translation and one of those things is thou shalt not shed innocent blood. There's a little bit of a difference there, right? So I mean, there is definitely portions of these books, these recordings that are true, but how much of it's put there to create authoritarian control, right? By being like, hey, he's magic. He'll raise you from the dead, except,
So in some cases, it might be said that these things are, there's an agenda behind them having been written. So how would we differentiate between, how would we know?
So again, like I said, there's a lot of stories that are almost identical in other religions, but then you always say, like, there's slight variations.
Okay. So when you say things like, like when you say thou shalt not kill, did that have to be written down for people to figure out that that's probably not a good thing to do?
I mean, I think we can all agree it shouldn't be done, but at the same time,
I mean, the fact that it has been written down and people are still killing each other.
It hasn't changed nothing.
It has not affected anything.
No, it hasn't affected anything. Actually, I think...
a good thing, and here's an example that comes up all the time, is why in the Ten Commandments was not the commandment, thou shalt not keep slaves? I mean, it seems self-evident.
Yeah.
It seems self-evident to us now.
Well, I mean, because you're talking about a group that also believed in slavery so long. Well, you just can't keep your own religious buddies as slaves for too long.
Right.
So there's an issue right there. I mean, like, slavery's been a renowned thing throughout human history, and
but not so much anymore.
I mean,
it happens.
It's still prevalent right now, depending on where you are, right? I mean, not here in North America and most civilized nations, but I mean, hell, even China's still got a form of slavery with North Korean immigrants coming up and basically being slave labor for China and Russia. Like, that's an ongoing situation right now.
Yep.
And so...
And I'm sure all the people that work at Nike.
Right? I mean, like, how... Like,
I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
Yeah, suicide nets are a thing. I wonder how that happened, right?
So let's get back to this empathy thing. So empathy, now do you think, because if you're kind of relating this idea that you have a belief in spirit, is spirit and empathy sort of entangled?
I think that's the bigger entangled part than with the brain.
Okay.
Right? Like, it's more entangled with so I guess the best way to put it is, like, the mind is everything that's going on, all your thoughts and stuff, but your spirit is the silence.
Okay.
Right? When you're completely silent and just perceiving and there's nothing going on, that is spirit. Is that quiet, objective observer, right?
Okay.
Is spirit. Whereas mind is all of the thoughts that circulate in your brain.
So spirit is independent of mind.
Yes.
Okay, and where does spirit come from?
Spirit? Man, that's a great question. I think that, like, again, that goes back to me believing about this thing being an antenna. Like, I believe
that's what I'm trying to get to. Is
spirit.
Spirit
to me is like you went out with the net, and whatever got caught in the net, right? Whatever energy that is that got caught in the net, that's the spirit that you've got.
And that spirit is what informs empathy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why. Like, I think you have people who, for no godforsaken reason, are totally sociopathic. Like,
so we earlier had said, asked whether a person could feel that they're being empathetic, but in fact have it completely wrong. what's going on in that case?
When someone's trying to be empathetic and they're getting it completely wrong.
Well, I mean, if spirit is informing empathy and spirit is independent of mind, a person gets this notion of empathy but is completely wrong. What is the reliability of this thing, spirit, to inform?
Well, it's
empathy?
like I feel like it's like anything else, like if you're computer programming or using any other new hardware. If you've got a new program, say you gave someone back in the first brick cell phones, one of these guys, right? He didn't know how to use it, doesn't know how to interpret any of it. What's Tinder? The hell is this stuff, right? He's interpreting a lot of things entirely wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I think a lot of us interpret things so heavily wrong is because we put no time whatsoever into honing it. None.
Okay.
Right? So
you think you can train spirit then to be more reliably empathetic?
That's again where I think meditation comes in. Is you're actually figuring out because you can't go out there trying to get an objective reality when you don't even understand how you're perceiving things.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like you can't just assume that even while your brain's all scattered, that things are coming through clearly. Right? You actually have to sit down and figure yourself out and actually understand what you're perceiving.
So are there
how
things?
You're perceiving.
Are there things that because we, I'm sure, can agree that there are things that can affect our five senses, so that the information we're getting from them is not aligning with objective reality. For instance, taking drugs or being sleepy or there's a lot of variables that can affect our senses that influence how we
perception,
interpret, how we perceive the world and how we interpret.
Oh yeah, like I mean,
is there similarly any conditions that would affect spirit to inform empathy?
Well, I mean, like I said, it's my belief that it's a net of energy that we've collected, so to speak. I mean, it's always going to be put through it's another lens that it's being put through, and it's if you've got a scratched up, messed up lens because you have put zero time into keeping it clean, things are always going to come in weird.
Right.
So
how does one know whether or not their spiritual lens is clean or dirty?
Well, I would assume first step, like with a lot of people, is if you can't sit somewhere and have a blank mind, might be a little bit dirty, right? Like if you can't sit calmly and quietly and just have nothing going on, you might that should be possible. Any human being should be able to sit down and just, I guess, zone out and not be perceiving anything. And if you can't do that, there's definitely something going on it's going to be affecting everything that comes in.
So how can you be sure that that's the case? Well, how can you be sure that a person is spiritually attuned because they're able to sit down and reflect and have nothing going on in their minds?
Well, generally people who can sit down and meditate, like so to speak, and just clear their minds are a lot more cognizant of what they're doing. Like people who, we just know that people who do more meditation are just more aware of what's going on. And
but how can you be sure of that, though? How would you be able to test that? Like how do you know?
How do you know?
Yeah, how do you know that?
I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is like the role models I've seen who do take part in things like hot yoga, for instance, where it's trying to clear your mind, that kind of stuff. The people who do these kinds of things seem to have a benefit. Like, I don't know how many people I've seen doing podcasts that cannot get enough of this stuff, of clearing their own mind and being aware of what they're doing. And it's like, it's so much more than just your brain thinking.
So, remember I mentioned Sam Harris?
Yeah.
Right? So Sam Harris, he does these mindfulness meditations, right? But, Sam Harris doesn't believe in a spirit. He believes these are all manifestations of the mind, and that being able to clear the mind makes one a clearer thinker, without any element of spirituality, which of course he has no evidence to support even exists, right? What do you think about that? Like, is it possible that you could just eliminate the whole concept of spirituality and have mindfulness and calm and all that kind of stuff?
You definitely
in
could.
Your mind.
You don't have to focus on spirituality for, like, it's, we got a calculator on a cell phone. Doesn't mean you have to use it all the time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like,
well, I guess what I'm trying to figure out is if Sam Harris can get to a clear state and can communicate how he gets there without any need for spirituality, what is your need for spirituality in order to get to a similar state?
you don't, well, like I said, I don't necessarily need to think about spirituality out there, right? You can use the same methods. It's just, for me, I only use it as a situation for explaining those weird, peculiar events that happen where, like, extreme deja vu, where people, like my girlfriend, for instance, has had a deja vu that lasted like 6 hours, where she just knew things were going to happen. And it's stuff like that where, I mean, she's pretty clear-minded, so she's more open, suggestively, to see those kinds of things, I would say.
Okay.
But, like, the mind, I just don't think the mind can do those kinds of things, you know?
But what if it could be demonstrated that it could, in fact, do those things?
That the brain could see into the future?
Well, again, I know that there's been a lot of research on deja vu.
Yeah.
And there's some pretty good explanations as to why it seems like it happens that way.
Well, because your brain's having a little bit of seizure.
Without any sense of actually seeing the future.
Yeah.
I know I've had experiences of deja vu, some of them seeming to last, a couple of minutes anyway. But any sense that I get that I've seen it before, I don't have a way of predicting anything. I can't say the fly is going to hit the window 3 times and make it out. It is so close. It is so close. It's just the sense that I've seen this before, but I don't have any power to predict.
So that's again where I found it weird with Mel, was because she was able to tell us people were coming through a door, or that someone was going to be knocking on the door. That was the weird part. Right, was her being able to say things were going to happen because she had dreamed about them. That's where I get confused, right? Where you can't, there's just no way you calculated that. There's no way your brain just knew that was going to happen.
And you're probably right.
Right?
But is there possibly another explanation that doesn't involve, seeing into the future? I mean, if someone only counted ever their successes in being able to predict things without counting the times that
failures?
They were not wrong, right?
Yeah.
Where do you think would be the outcome? Would the person say, well, because then, of course, whatever power that represents is completely unreliable.
Well, it's like for me, like there's just some future predictions that you can just make, because like it's just it's numbers, right? Like so, for instance, like I made this prediction years ago. I'm like, if it goes to World War III and there are nukes shot everywhere, someone's gonna hit Yellowstone National Park. Like that's a strategic place to hit. Like, is that like, am I a prophet for making that prediction? No.
Right.
Because anyone could do the math and realize, oh yeah, if it goes to that you would hit that.
Yeah. So what if a person, as a matter of habit, every once in a while would say, I predict that someone's going to knock on my door, and 5 times it happens, and that's what they report, but they don't report the 150 times that they said that. And it didn't happen. Yeah. What would that say about any kind of predictive power? If you were only being told of the 5 times, yes, I predicted that someone was going to come and knock on my door, and it happened. Wow. Oh, wow. That's pretty cool. Yeah. But of course, they're not reporting the 150 other times, right? Yeah. So it may look impressive, but not necessarily so.
Well, true. but knowing that that person very rarely makes predictions anyways.
Well, I guess I mean, because again, it speaks to how do these phenomena manifest. I mean, we talk about spirit as a form of energy. Is this energy confined to the universe, and is it bound by the laws of physics? Like, how does all this stuff, where does it come from? Is it outside the universe and influences the inside of the universe? Or, like, how do we possibly ever test this stuff?
That's just like, the same kind of thing occurs when you look into like the Mandela effect. Like, how do you even test it? How do you even know? Like, how could you possibly, like, did millions of people's memories all simultaneously remember the wrong thing? Or was there...
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
So, okay, like, the Mandela effect was coined back when several thousand people believed that Nelson Mandela had died in prison, when obviously he did not, right? He ended up being freed and then going on to become the president of South Africa. We know that is a fact. But to like thousands of people, it's a false memory that he died in prison.
Right.
And another one that kind of has stirred up our household quite a lot is this Berenstain Bears. So it's spelt stain as S-T-A-N, like coffee stain, right? Mm-hmm. But in our household, we all kind of grew up on them, and big arguments back in the day for all of us kids that were growing up to it was it Berenstein or Berenstein? It was E-I-N to us. I mean, that's the only reason we would argue about it. But it's stain. How did we screw that? Even our parents.
So how did you screw it up?
How did we all screw that up?
What do you think?
Well, see, this is where, like, okay, so some people, I thoroughly disbelieve some of the proposed arguments. The big proposed argument is that, like, people have moved from one dimension to another, and now you're in this different dimension, and I'm just simply, no. That requires an obscene amount of energy. Like, you can't be transporting tens of thousands of people across dimensions and not notice it, okay? Like, that's a lot of energy. Like, someone's going to see that. We're good.
Well, more than energy, it requires a shit ton of explanation.
Yeah.
Right?
Right?
Because you're now having to generate a whole different kind of universe.
Yes. Now...
the one we don't live in.
Yeah. The thing I find more likely is... So I kind of believe in this whole multiverse thing that we exist in. There's just a whole bunch. But I feel like more than people just popping in and out of dimensions, it's this giant bell, or how would you call it? It's like it goes like that. Opens and closes kind of thing, right? All the potential possibilities happen until they reach a point where it all starts curving back in on itself, and they just coalesce again. Right? So, like... for how they propose our universe, right? It comes from the Big Bang, it expands, so it can't expand no more, and then it starts going back into black holes, reblows up again, same thing. And
that model has been pretty well put on the shelf, right?
Yeah, it's definitely been shelved for a while, because the thing's just not stopping expanding, it's speeding up.
Yeah. Right,
Right, so
how do we bring this back to spirit?
So
empathy.
Spirit to me is like why so many people would believe something like Stein over Stain, especially when it's obvious it's Stain.
Right.
Like, it's quite obviously written Stain now.
Okay.
But to a lot of these people, what I feel is happening is that whole fourth dimensional wave thing, because a fourth dimensional wave wouldn't be like what we're used to. Wouldn't be an expanding bubble through just time and space as a material. It would be going through time, space, dimensions. It wouldn't be crossing just gaps in our universe, right?
Right.
So, and as it's like, okay, what I was going to say is, like, as we're kind of coming back together and it's going to like some sort of inevitability, all of these waves are being crunched, and the majority of coin flips in the dimensions, right? Because like every time there's a choice or an outcome, it divides. The majority of them is what we're retaining. So that's why I think so many people believe it was Stein or Steen over Stain, was because in a whole bunch of dimensions, it was Steen or Stein. But as we compressing, coming down towards the, final stages of our universe, right? Like, if it's still and again, these things take billions of years. This is billions upon billions of years.
So it took billions and billions of years for it to shift from Steen to Stein to Stain?
No, like...
Sorry, I'm just being facetious there.
No, what I'm saying, though, is, like, so out of all the possibilities from the beginning of the universe, we've reached the point where now it's bell curving back in, and that's why we're seeing it speed up. That's what I'm thinking.
Okay. I mean, certainly there's no way to test whether or not that's true, right? I mean, we can think about anything without ever having any possibility of demonstrating whether what we are thinking is true or not. So, I'm curious what the practical value in hypothesizing something you can never test.
Because I don't think we can't test. I don't think that the issue is that we can't test it.
But what I see here is that you are sort of, supporting a belief that you have about certain things like spirit and empathy on things that you currently can't test and probably don't have the means to test.
I don't have the money
for
to
a long
test
time.
things.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
so that's sort of trying to drill down to what the practical value of believing things you can't test. If your beliefs are informing your actions and your actions have consequences, is it not the case that poorly formed beliefs can lead you
poorly
to formed actions, which can generate poor consequences?
Oh yeah, for sure that could happen. But I mean, if you're basing actions on personal beliefs as well, right? There's an issue. But for me, I don't put a lot of actions on personal beliefs rather than trying to look back at it and see how I'm getting it wrong.
Mm-hmm. I have a notion about beliefs, and that we don't choose them. We don't choose our beliefs. That they're sort of a summation or culmination or a distillation of our experiences and how we've come to interpret them, right? Mm-hmm. So, for instance, a person who believes in God did not just wake up one day and say, "Oh, I believe in Jesus Christ as my Savior." That came as the culmination of a lot of influences, probably from the family, from watching television ads, and the 700
everybody
Club
knows
or
the
whatever.
only true church is the one you were born into, right? Like,
yeah, there you go.
So,
but even any other kinds of beliefs. So, I have conversations where, I ask, well, what's the belief you'd like to talk about? Well, I don't really have strong beliefs. Well, of course you have strong beliefs. You just don't recognize how strong they are. The fact is that your beliefs are the lens through which you interpret and view and perceive the world.
Yeah. That's
the filter. So it's over time that we change our beliefs and change our perceptions, right?
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Oh, like... That's why I've come to some of the weird conclusions I've come to, is because it's like seeing these same things being like some of these studies on quantum physics, for instance, have made me seriously question the reality I'm in, like definitely, and then just seeing very odd belief-based things happen. Mm-hmm. So like where personal belief of people affected a physical outcome. That has always been very interesting to me. Is like, how does a person's belief, how could someone's personal belief possibly physically affect the universe without them taking action on it?
I'm not sure. I'm not very clear on what you mean.
So, again, when I was talking about the random number generator, where they did a study and they had clicks put on for left it was 1, for 0 it would be a right click in the headphones. And so they had a bunch of these random number generators run, and then what they did is they took them to volunteers and said, hey, I want you to run over this audio. There's more right clicks than left clicks, and every single time the scientists seemingly predicted exactly how many there was going to be. And there's just no way that every single scientist got the coin flip right when they delivered these to volunteers. The more likely they already did the science behind it, and it's
So you're saying that the scientists have demonstrated that there's
something at a very small level we can affect with just thought. Like for them, it was at the level of just electrons. Like we're not. It's not like moving the chair with your mind. Like that is so not going to happen. But what did happen was their belief somehow, believing 100% that that's the way it was, even though it was a small detail. It was just literally nothing to them in their mind, but they wholeheartedly believed it because they were told that that's the way it was. And it affected something on a very, very tiny scale. Yeah, but physically though, like every single one of those recordings was spot on. They had more clicks on whatever side the scientist told the volunteer it would be on, and that's a huge issue, like for me, because it's like it's one thing to flip a coin a bunch of times and be right quite a few times. It's totally different to flip a coin hundreds of times and every single one of them is the one you predicted.
Has that ever happened?
For what?
What you just said there.
Me flipping a coin?
No, or anybody.
No,
Anybody
that
in
was
world.
the study that they did, right? Is they had
So there's a study essentially that by
more or less, yeah, they used a computer to flip coins over and over and over again. It had a few hundred ones and zeros, and it would either be a 1 or 0 just randomly.
okay. So what is that saying?
That to me was the issue, is that there's something about it's not just kind of believing that changed it.
It's like intentionality, right?
Yeah, it was
Okay.
the matter of fact. Like there is definitely more left clicks than right clicks on there. I need you to verify it. And the person's like, okay. And for some reason, it was.
So how come this isn't more on the news? Why? I mean, that sounds to me like a...
Oh, come on, why isn't it on the news? Look at the news. There's so many other funny things to show, right? Like,
Well, why wouldn't have someone win a Nobel Prize for this?
what do you mean?
Well, I mean, if you're talking about a demonstration of psychic powers, essentially, is what you're saying here, right? Is that if someone can... It's beyond what the physical universe as we understand it, right? Mm-hmm. You're talking about something, a phenomenon that cannot be explained in any way, shape, or form through our current physical laws. Because certainly flipping coins 100 times, the odds are, the chance of it coming up heads predictably.
But you will
100
never
times.
accomplish that with a flipping of a coin, though. See, that's the thing, is we are...
But you likened it to that.
Yes.
You used that as an
Yeah,
example.
I likened it to that because that's the best way to assume it, because there's one of two sides it'll end up on. That's the only reason I use the coin.
Right.
Is because either it'll be a 1 or it'll be a 0. But the scale at which we're talking is electrons. Like, this is the bread and butter on which our brains function. So that it seems very odd to me that it has that kind of effect, and how is it affecting it? We don't really know. All we know is that it's the fact belief that seems to change it.
Okay. I mean, I guess I've never seen
Well, like
a study like that.
you've
But
probably seen the double slot experiment, right?
are you talking about the double slit?
Yeah, the double slit
with-
experiment. Yeah,
Yeah, with light.
yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Of course.
So that
That demonstrates that light is both a particle and a wave.
And so
Okay.
what they translated that to the electrons going onto these recordings. And so it wasn't until someone observed it that they assumed that on the cassettes that it was a wave until the person listened to it.
Okay, I think you're talking about Schrodinger's cat, right?
Yeah, but more specifically, it's not in the sense of like such a small or such a large thing. It's very minuscule changes.
Of course, yeah. That's the whole Yeah, so I am actually familiar with what you're talking about. I just wanted to make sure that because that is, purely a physical phenomena, right? It doesn't actually involve any kind of spiritual quality to it. They don't have
there's no
they
way
don't have the 100% answer on this.
Yeah.
But there's nothing so far that suggests that there's some as yet unknown spirit or something that's affecting these things to make that happen.
Yeah, during the double slit experiment, for sure.
Yeah.
Like, all we know is that if you put an observer in there, it'll break down and go into a particle. We know that, like, it stops being a wave once you put an observer in.
Right.
That's what
the cat is either alive or dead.
Yeah.
Once the observer opens the box.
Once the observer opens the box. Yeah. But the experiment they did there, I wish I could remember off the top of my head who. This was 10 years ago I was reading this, but yeah, like, they did something along the same lines, but then wondered, well, what if we throw in telling the people what they're going to observe? And when they told the people what they were about to observe, which no one observed, no one had an opportunity to observe it or hear it or understand what happened. That was the key to the test, was no one got to observe it first until you told someone what they were going to observe. And did it change things? Who knows? It's hard to say if it actually changed anything, because while yes, it was done previous and it was recorded, no one knew it was on there.
Mm-hmm. Again, it
was Schrodinger's cat up until then.
Yeah. You're describing something though that I think it's you're elevating the Schrodinger's cat thing to an experiment you remember, which we can't access right now. Yeah. So it may be from 10 years ago. The way you remember it now is not as accurate or clear as when you read it initially, right?
Yeah.
So maybe it actually didn't unfold in the way you think it did.
Oh, it was definitely said in that fashion.
Okay.
Like that was the one thing, because it's so confusing. It's mind-blowingly confusing. Like, how does that
So
happen?
Having read this thing 10 years ago,
yeah.
You would think that there would be a subsequent experiments that would, try to test whether or not that was a one-off or whether this is an easily repeatable phenomenon.
So, like, Discovery Channel had this great show. It was Navy SEALs versus ninjas. This was you could probably look it up at any time.
Yeah.
So, in that episode, they compared Navy SEALs going to take down a target versus ninjas going to take down a target. It's identical and everything. The only difference is, or the key difference in the show that I thought was really interesting, that they kind of like breezed over, right? And you're asking, like, why aren't we doing more studies on this? This is why. So when Discovery Channel did this thing, the Navy SEALs got an entire floor plan of the house, all the blueprints, all this intel that they could get. The ninjas were literally confined to having psychics staying in Texas who were never allowed to have been in California draw out and write down what this house and property looked like on the inside. The messed up part to me is that even on Discovery Channel, these people did it. They accomplished said task. They were drawing chandeliers and stairwells and everything. They were drawing where guards were going to be in 6 days. And meanwhile, they had that on Discovery Channel playing, and then they're just like, okay, well, and then they moved on. And it's like, well, you could have made a whole show about how did these people do that? Why did they brush over? And I think a lot of it is we like to brush over those things because, God forbid, they were true. Like, the ramifications of those things being true kind of breaks down society as we know it, right? Because power structure goes to hell. That was on the Navy SEALs versus ninjas on Discovery Channel. I remember that like it was yesterday, because I'm still to this day baffled and confused why they didn't go further into the fact that those guys were drawing a building that they had no way of knowing what it looked like.
Is it possible that something's up there that is giving you that impression that didn't actually happen? I mean, it just seems to me, because there's been experiments in remote viewing and all that kind of stuff, and it was pretty conclusive that the phenomenon does not exist. So you're suggesting that this program
Yeah.
was a clear illustration of it actually working.
Yeah, it was so like why
Yeah.
like see my thing is though is like so if it's not, why is Discovery Channel putting that kind of information out there claiming it to be truth? Like again, like that's where I have to seriously question a lot of things because you have like I mean, yeah, and we can test that remote viewing isn't possible, but yet why is Discovery Channel trying to right?
So how come you haven't looked further into it?
Why haven't I? Because
I mean, if this is a pretty important belief that you have, and that a program like that sort of helps substantiate and justify what you believe, why haven't you looked more into what that actually meant?
Because a lot of it's just for show, man. Like for them, like that's the thing is it's like how much of this shit is for ratings for them, right? Like did they do that for ratings?
Right.
But again, why is supposed to be science media outlets portraying this stuff?
Yeah.
And it's causing like massive what's that called? You have opposing thoughts in your head. There's a word for it.
Contradictions.
Yeah, contradiction, sure. We'll use that one. But it's cognitive dissonance. That's the word.
Yeah.
So it's this engineered cognitive dissonance I'm seeing. It's like where we're being told these like matter-of-fact things, and then it's like we're doing backup tests, and it's like, no, that's not true, but we're still not pulling it down.
And it's interesting because there are a couple of programs on the Discovery Channel. Like one of them is called What on Earth. And it's, taking satellite images and finding weird things and then trying to figure out what they actually are. And they always start with the most outrageous explanations of aliens or Bigfoot or spirit or whatever.
Yeah.
And then it turns out just to be, an anomaly in the geography or something.
Yeah.
Which is perfectly explained by erosion. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think, when you spend, certainly people are interested in ratings and all that kind of stuff, spend a lot of time trying to pull people into these weird places and then disappoint them.
Well, yeah.
by explaining it.
See, that's the thing though, is right? Is it's like I don't like those ones are they're okay. Like it's fine as long as you're going to finish it up with yes, but that's not true. I'm fine with that. It's the issue with like that Ninjas versus Navy SEALs one, which was just like, to me, is that akin to the mermaid documentary? Because you guys didn't come out and say that you're, like, you must have seen the mermaid documentary. No, oh my god. So Discovery Channel's done mermaid documentaries and dragon documentaries now. Okay,
okay.
They're both mockumentaries, but obviously when they first portray them, it's like, oh no, it's real, and then it isn't.
Well, could this, when you were talking about the ninjas,
see,
Navy
but that
SEALs
was
be
the issue,
same
is
thing?
because they didn't go on after to say how it was faked.
Yeah.
Because those other two, they definitely did. Like, it was the follow-up episode is like, this is how we did it.
Right. But again, my question to you then is, because it seems to confirm what you already think, why didn't you go check it out to make sure that was, in fact...
Well, at the time, I definitely checked out the research, the program that they had done, but I didn't dig any further, I guess, into...
Well, send me a link to that.
For sure.
Because I'll watch it, and then maybe we could, follow up with this discussion to see where...
Like, why do they do that? I don't know.
Right,
Is it to cause these cognitive dissonance, to leave us all confused, and bewildered as to what's going on? Who can you trust for truth? And... Yeah.
So moving ahead, what do you think? What do you think about spirit? Like, has this helped, sort of clarify in your mind maybe what you mean by it, or?
See, to me, like, again, spirit is just like it's like, so you obviously have all these electrical signals going around in your head, all these thoughts going on in your head, and to me, when those things stop occurring, right, when you're clear of thought, to me, that's the spirit is the quiet observer, right? It's that collection of like non-flowing data signals in your brain when you're just sitting there idle.
So could it then possibly just be explained as a state of the mind?
I think so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like
Without necessarily being something outside of the mind.
yeah, like I mean, so
the busy stuff
Is
our
the-
consciousness and our mind and all that kind of stuff. And when all that just calms down, that's a spirit, the state of spirit.
That's the state of the spirit, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, would be a way to put that.
Okay.
Because it's like, yeah, like our brains are just like this whole misconstrued idea of like we only use 10% of our brain. Wow,
Right.
what a fallacy, right?
Yes, of
like
course.
the vast majority of our brain is getting used
All the time.
quite a lot.
Yeah.
But when you're at rest, we find that everything kind of lowers down. There's not so much going on,
Mm-hmm.
but you're still there, clearly. Like when you're in that state, you are still very much aware of what's going on. But
It's still you, too.
it's still
isn't it?
you.
It's
yeah.
still you.
It's
Yeah.
still you, but it's more of the subtleties, I guess, slip in, like where you're really like your beliefs and stuff, right? So I don't necessarily believe that beliefs themselves are the signals looping around, right? Because those beliefs are still there even when you turn all that stuff off, right? You're still sitting there and you're just conscious in there. You'll still retain your beliefs. And where are they being retained, right? Like, I feel like beliefs are retained in the spirit, whereas memory, knowledge.
Well, now so maybe you're equating spirit with consciousness,
Yeah.
because you think about. I just finished a book on the nature of consciousness. It was very interesting and kind of woke me up to a whole bunch of notions about it. But you think about a molecule of water is composed of hydrogen, 2 hydrogens, and an oxygen. Well, how many of those do you have to have together in one place before you have the quality of wetness?
Oh, yeah, eh?
You know what I mean? So, consciousness could be sort of an emergent, what they call an emergent property. So something that only happens after so much other stuff is going on.
As amalgamated, yeah.
Yeah, so that, in the course of evolution, the brain was simply a place where input signals came in so that we could avoid being eaten, so we could run away from predators, so that we could look for food, so that we could, get out of the cold, that kind of stuff. And that as these differential machines just got more complicated and having to do more stuff, it eventually just spontaneously of its own, this emergent property of consciousness sort of came.
Yeah, like as we know right now, like seizures, specifically epileptic seizures, are a direct cause because our brains expanded way faster than like our software did. I was watching an interesting thing on like where like hiccups come from. That was originally from the critters coming out of the ocean, hiccuping all the water out of their lungs so they could breathe. And this is just if you smoke or anything like that, or you drink and you get hiccups when you're smoking, that's actually there's a massive causation there. It's because you're changing the fluid going into your lungs, so your body is wanting to reject it. I found that it was like one of the weirdest ones is it's almost impossible to hiccup if you have like a mouthful of water. Your brain goes, no, there's water in there, so you gotta spit that out. Like, we're not putting that back in, right?
Right.
So the same thing with seizures is that our brains develop very rapidly. Like, we got a lot more RAM really quickly. So, like this whole area, the frontal cortex, where we do most of our imagining and stuff, that got really big really fast.
So if perhaps what the notion of the notion of the spirit can, in a sense, be almost likened to what consciousness is.
Where it's just a thing
It's a manifestation of the mind, an emergent property of the brain, as opposed to some other outside force.
I mean, it's good.
Is it possible?
It is possible that it's an emergent quality of the neuron itself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the equivalent of wetness to the water. Like, our neurons together are molecules of water, and we finally are wet. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's finally
so consciousness being explained as an expression of that
Yeah.
of wet, like being likened to wetness and water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, now that you're there, when you're alone and quiet, you're damp. You know,
There you go.
like you're swimming in that ocean, right?
That's right.
So yeah, I could see that for sure. Like, there's definitely properties to the brain going on where
That we don't.
we can't understand.
We
right now
don't understand necessarily.
because you can't just be cutting open everyone's head and watching how it's running, right? Like, a little bit difficult.
Yeah.
Probably
They might
against
have been able to do that 100 years ago.
Yeah, but we didn't really have the technology to look at it too good. So
Exactly. Yeah. So as our technology has improved, the less invasive we're allowed to be.
yeah,
right?
let's actually find out if there's anything to mind and spirit,
That's
right?
right.
Like, we're finally at the time now where we can actually start really looking into it, but a part of me feels like we don't really want to. Like, it's
Yeah.
not as much of an endeavor, I think, as it should be. Like, we would way rather go look at everything else out there than, God forbid, we sit down and look in a mirror at ourselves, right? Like,
There you go.
I think social media is a testament to that fact, that we refuse to sit down and maybe look in towards ourselves and maybe wonder what's going on in there.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's why I think intrinsically, like, spirit has become the thing it has become, is because no one, like, when we do self-reflection, we see things sometimes we don't like. We got to put it somewhere. Like this. One of my favorite things is why I stopped being religious personally was, every time you do something wrong or you're compelled to do something wrong, devil made you do it, right? You didn't do it. You didn't come up with that thought, right? But intrinsically, I sit there and go, no. Something in me came up with that. Like, I'm not going to just blame some invisible red-skinned dude who, for all
May or
intents
may
and
not
purposes,
exist,
doesn't
right?
exist,
Right.
right? So, like, rather than scapegoat it that way, it's like we have to look,
Being accountable to ourselves.
and yeah.
Well, we're going to tie it up here, I think.
Yeah.
But I think it's, I think it might be a valuable thing to, think about. I certainly want to see their show, the Ninjas. And
Yeah, it
Navy
was
Seals,
definitely very
just to
interesting.
kind of see if they were purposely misleading, because I know some of these programs are.
Well, yeah, because it's like
mockumentaries.
They
as you-
just
as you
brushed
say.
right over it. Meanwhile, they're like, look at all this
Because
proof.
you think that would be infinitely interesting
you-
if they were actually
I thought that would've been-
demonstrating remote viewing.
Yeah, that was a
as
half-hour show rather than
Right.
cut everything else out, right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah. But I think this was a good conversation.
oh, absolutely.
Yeah, right on.
Yeah, right on.
Yeah, cheers, man.
Yeah, for
Thanks
sure.
so much.